Going live. Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, friends. Thanks for being with us tonight. We are talking travel on Travel Tuesday, and our topic tonight is
Iceland.
Iceland, the beautiful island of Iceland. And we traveled there together a few years ago, had a great experience. And of course, one of our goals of having this Travel Tuesday discussion every once in a while is to share our experience and hopefully answer some questions from any of you who are interested in traveling there as well. So,
yeah, and it's a fun topic to talk about. It's the middle of Arizona summer for us, so a cool, brisk place with lots of water surrounding it seems appropriate, and also one of our favorite travel experiences of all time, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. So in preparation for tonight's program, I made an Icelandic delicacy. It is known as kleinur. I hope I'm saying it right. Kleina if it's one, kleinur if it's more than one. So we have a mountain of kleinur.
You should explain that it's a donut.
Well,
not chicken tenders.
Yeah. It does kind of look like chicken, doesn't it? So it's such an interesting process to make these. And honestly, I've had donuts in so many countries, and I don't think I've ever met a donut I didn't like. These are really delicious. And you cut the dough, you roll out the dough, cut it into a diamond shape, put a slit in the middle, and then essentially turn half of the donut inside out. So you get all of these amazing ridges that are crunchy. I think that's the best part of a donut.
Yeah, they're delicious. I don't remember. I think maybe we did have them there.
Did we?
Yeah, I think we bought some for like our road trip.
I think we might have. Yeah. Anyway, they're in the dough itself, there's cardamom and nutmeg. So it has those nice warming spices. And then
yeah, they're great.
When they're out of the oil, you can roll them in sugar and cinnamon. And how amazing does that look? Yeah. So essentially, we're having breakfast for dinner and having these Icelandic kleinur
donuts.
And after I post this in the archives, I will share the link to the recipe that I used to make these kleinur in case you're interested in trying. It wasn't very hard, actually. If you have like a tiny little fryer and some white flour and sugar, and I mean,
yeah, the whole house smelled really good.
Delicious. Anyway, let's see. Patty B is here. She says, I call Minnesota home. Hello. And Tony says, Tony and Jason are watching from Idaho.
Thank you.
I think I accused them from tuning in, that they were tuning in Indiana last time, but they're actually in Idaho. Thank you for clarifying that, Tony. So we also wanted to talk about another food item that's really popular in Iceland, and that is puffin. Yeah. So if you don't know what a puffin is, explain what a puffin is, Joel.
So a puffin is a bird that is native to that area, and it's especially famous in Iceland. They're kind of these cute birds. They look a little bit like a penguin, and they flock on the seawalls and the cliffs. And it's I don't think it's the only place in the world you can find them, but they're mostly known for that. They have a kind of a migratory season that they are there, and you've probably seen them. They have like these neat little side colors. Yeah, they've got like the orange nose, and they're very famous from Iceland. So unfortunately,
they are kind of endangered. They're not technically endangered from what I can find in the research, but they are really at risk because of climate change, because of threats to their environment, because they only lay one egg at a time, and then they're perched on these really steep cliffs. So they have predators, they have difficulty finding the food that they need due to climate change, but they are often consumed by the tourists as smoked puffins. So
right, they're provided by places, restaurants in Iceland, and it's kind of more from what we understood from a tour guide and from some locals. They're hunted, but they're they're served, and it's not something that the locals really eat. They're kind of served as like not a delicacy, but kind of a novelty. So it's kind of sad, I guess, but it does go back to their history of being a very isolated island. So they relied on fish and anything that they could grab, but that's not their situation anymore. It's a full-on first world European capital where you can get any kind of food that you want. So they don't have to eat the native birds anymore, but much like in other parts of the world, in Peru, where they eat certain things that aren't really necessary anymore, they eat puffins. So we're going to eat some puffins.
I think that for tourists, it's the novelty of it. Like fermented shark is another one that the tourists really try. It's a traditional food. It apparently is not delicious, but people try it for the novelty of it. In fact, we saw a woman try fermented shark in a restaurant, and she chewed it and swallowed it and started to cry because it was so awful. So anyway, neither Joel nor I tried the shark or the smoked puffin. So we're going to have puffin tonight. I did some research and sourced some puffin. And so tonight's the night. Are you ready, Joel?
Here it is.
Puffin cereal.
We weren't going to eat a real puffin.
No, we never would do that. So anyway, it's peanut butter cereal. No puffins were harmed in our dinner tonight, and we are having breakfast for dinner. And we have lots of people tuning in. So Georgette is here. Hey. She says no, and I think she's talking about the puffins when she says that. And let's see, Scott is here.
Hello.
He says he got his audio to work. That's good. Joining from Washington. Hi, Scott. Nora is watching from St. Cloud, Minnesota. And another Scott. It's a 2-Scott night.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's see. Scott says he's learning a lot. Teresa is here. She's laughing. Georgette says, yes, the second you said puffin, I was like, no.
I think we could have strung that out a long time and been like,
we could have made people sweat.
Specialty market back, in the, somewhere that we ordered it from, and it came freeze dried and all this stuff, but we can't do that.
But anybody who knows us knows that we wouldn't be eating puffin, right?
Well, back to the fermented shark, they that goes back again to thank you, to their food history, which is they would it's a really isolated island, and so they weren't able to import things, and so they just had to rely on what they had, and so they would catch shark and fish and then bury it in the ground with basically like a lye almost
for months,
so that it could keep through the winter, like a lot of Scandinavian and Nordic countries did. And then but now again, they serve it to tourists, and there's really no reason for it. But it's these little cubes, and you stick a toothpick in it, and apparently it just tastes like
pee.
Ammonia. Yeah, and you can't differ.
So why? Why choose the foods that are delicious? And Iceland does many things very well. Of course, fish is super popular. They do fish really well. Lots of cod dishes. They have locally grown fruits and vegetables that are grown in greenhouse settings because the climate there is pretty crazy. The land is pretty crazy, but they do have a really well-developed and thoughtfully developed agricultural system there because shipping things in is so expensive and it has to come from so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of indoor agriculture, so greenhouses and things where they grow vegetables. And so, they don't have any issue with being completely isolated from anyone and having to just eat native, eat fish and all the things that they could just produce for themselves. Anyway, I don't know if they have puffin cereal there, but
no. Well, Trader Joe has it. The highly regarded sourcing of Trader Joe.
So cereal and donuts.
And Kleinur. You can make them yourselves. So Joel, I did some research.
We're going to do a little quiz, are we?
Well, I'll ask you a few questions. See if and maybe our viewers also can answer these. Okay. So the first question I had, don't Google it. Don't cheat. Do not cheat. We'll know if you cheat. What fast food restaurant that is common in the U.S. will you not find in Iceland?
McDonald's.
Let's see what
That's
people
my
think.
guess. I don't know.
See if people are. Let's see. Tony says McDonald's. So there are so many fast food restaurants that you could guess, right? And pretty much wherever we travel, we see American fast food.
Yeah.
It's almost to the point where it's hard to find a place where you aren't inundated with those restaurants.
Oh yeah. We've been in some pretty far-flung places. Thailand.
Scott says Taco John's. That could be true, actually. Taco Bell. M says Taco Bell. Somebody says Kentucky Fried. Heidi says Kentucky Fried Puffin.
That's really good.
That is a good one. I bet they have Kentucky Fried Muffin just for the tourists. Tony misses Taco John's. She doesn't have them in Idaho. I'm sad for you. So the answer is McDonald's. There is not a single McDonald's in Iceland. Here are some other interesting facts. They have no army. Think about that for a moment. Super interesting. And along those lines, police officers do not carry firearms in Iceland, which I think is really interesting. There are other countries where that is also the case, among them Ireland, Norway, Japan, New Zealand, and the UK.
They use that very Scandinavian sort of passive aggressiveness to subdue their criminals.
So what would they say to a criminal under those circumstances?
Porkin, florkin, borkin. I give up.
We should say
their language is quite something.
Icelandic is impossible for me to speak. I can't pronounce words even when I can see them on a map or on packaging. They have accents and things that they do with their mouth that I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and our tour guide, our city walk guide that she said it's the original Viking language.
You're right.
So when the Vikings were marauding about, that's the terrifying language that they use. But Reykjavik is probably the easiest word that they have. It only gets harder from
that. Could be true. And skyr, their yogurt is skyr, right?
Skyr, sure.
So you can sometimes find skyr in stores here. Iceland is one of the safest countries in the world. Super interesting, right? The cost of fuel. We're going to talk a little bit about how much things cost. Do you want to guess what a gallon of fuel goes for?
Right
there they sell it by the liter, of course, but a gallon right now.
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking me to do a liter, and I don't even
Go ahead.
know.
Anybody in the chat can guess as well. $8, says Tony. Teresa guesses $8. Scott says $10.
I was going to say 8. Yeah.
You guys are so smart. It's like $8.85 a gallon. $8.85 a gallon. And we rented a vehicle when we were there. And so, of course, we filled up with gas and drove it all over the place. We'll tell you more about that in a little while. Iceland is a really progressive country when it comes to things like maternity leave. They actually give a total of 12 months with the two parents. So each can take 6 months, and they can even transfer 6 weeks to one of the parents as well, which is pretty amazing, right? And guess how much of Iceland is covered by glaciers? In the chat, you can guess as well. I will eat some puffin.
I have some bad news. The ingredients, it just says dried puffin. So.
That's so awful. Tastes like peanuts. All right, Tony says none. How much of Iceland
is covered
by glaciers?
I'm going to say 40%.
Ooh, that's a big number. Good guess.
I think our tour guide told us, and I have forgotten. I don't retain information very well.
I rarely listen.
Remember how much the beer cost, though? I retained that.
No, it's crazy. All right, anyone else got a guess? 10%, says Teresa. It is Teresa is right. It's 11%. She is the closest. 11% is covered in glaciers. And we actually were able to see glaciers when we were driving around, which is, right? Amazing. And Tony changes her answer to 40%. You should quickly change it to 11%, Tony. So I found that super interesting. What insect that is super common where many of our viewers live cannot be found in Iceland? Not one. Anyone?
Centipede.
Ooh, I hate those things, by the way.
Yeah. Good video game, though.
Tony guesses 11% now. Good job, Tony.
You get a donut, too.
You get a Kleiner. Scott Thompson says mosquito, and Scott Peterson says mosquito, and Teresa says grasshopper. And the answer is mosquito. You do not need to bring your mosquito spray to Iceland.
How soon can we get there?
Yeah. Probably because it's too cold.
Possibly. I don't know. Did you find out why?
I did not.
Just aren't there.
I didn't dive that deep, but I guess I could do that after the show. So no mosquitoes in Iceland, which is super interesting. They also have universal health care, and they are at or near the top of quality of life metrics, including personal and economic freedom and peace and gender equality, which I think are all super interesting facts about Iceland.
Yeah, so we during our trip there, we took a city walk in Reykjavik. It was a guided, like most cities have, especially in Europe. It's pretty great, and I think we have them here too. But it's free, and you tip the guide, and of course you want to do that. But we got a really fun, interesting guide, and so she was really, really proud of her country and was telling us a lot of those things, which I've since forgotten. But they're very, very proud of a lot of the things that Cherish listed, like their police don't carry guns, for better or for worse, but and their quality of life is really high, and they seem to be able to manage. We didn't talk about it's near the Arctic Circle. I don't know if it's above or near the Arctic Circle. So you get the summer is sometimes 23, 24 hours of light. Winter is sometimes 24 hours of dark. And so, but they grew up with it. They're used to it. That's kind of their thing. So yeah. It's a really interesting place.
It really, really is. And it's so accessible for U.S. citizens. The most common tourists come from the U.S. To Iceland, which I can see because it was an easy trip for us.
Yeah, we flew from Minneapolis. So just from that perspective, I don't know where everyone is in the country, but it was about 6.5 hours because it's just the way that the Earth curves up there. It's a smaller flight than if you're going across the equator or something. So that's the extent of my math knowledge, my spatial awareness knowledge. But anyway, it's about a 6.5 hour flight, and you feel like it goes pretty fast, and you're in Europe. You're in a really cool place.
Tony asks about, do people live a long time there too?
Don't know.
And that is such a good question. My guess would be yes, because the people there struck me as very healthy people. There are tight controls on alcohol, actually, so people drink less. People eat a diet that's high in healthy fish fats.
But we're just guessing now.
I would
think that they're in line with all the other Nordic countries in terms of that longevity. And Patty B says mosquitoes, no standing water. That's probably true. That's probably true.
That is true.
There is water, but it's more of it's geothermal water.
So it's hot. So you would have boiled mosquitoes.
Boiled mosquitoes.
Let's see.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we wanted to talk about what we did on our trip. So Joel and I arrived, and what people typically do is they will tack on at the beginning or the end of their trip on their way to or from the airport a visit to the Blue Lagoon.
The Blue Lagoon. I think everybody we know, and it's a few, has been through there. It almost seems like requisite So it's between Reykjavik and the airport, which is out maybe, I don't know, about 40 kilometers, something like that. Don't quote me on that. It's maybe an hour. So like a lot of airports,
It's about an hour.
It's out away from the city center. But
Yep.
in between you and Reykjavik is the Blue Lagoon, and it's so common that the buses that take you from the airport to Reykjavik will stop at the Blue Lagoon and just pick up the next one.
Yeah.
And it's a vast complex of hot springs, natural hot springs that they have there.
It's
And-
a really nice high-end resort, or a high-end spa, sorry.
Yeah.
And I think some people might not realize that that's the case. It's been developed as a result of wastewater from a geothermal plant that's next door, which sounds weird, but the water is super clean, smells eggy pretty much everywhere you go.
Yeah, but not bad. Just
not
a little
bad.
bit.
Yeah.
And it is probably, in my somewhat travel experience and Cherish's extensive travel experience, is probably the best tourist trap that you could ever. When you say tourist, it is a tourist trap in a way, but it is just, and especially the way we did it, which was we did it on the way in, so we hadn't even done anything. We had our bags still with us. We had a locker. We hadn't even gotten to our hotel, but we spent about 3 or 4 hours at the Blue Lagoon because our flight was overnight. So we got in like at 6 a.m, and by 9 o'clock, I think we were sitting in a hot springs and relaxing after a long flight. And it's great. It's highly recommended. You'll think, okay, you'll see the brochures and you'll think, okay, this is kind of a tourist trap. Is it worth it? But it kind of is. And so that would be probably our first travel recommendation is, I think, do it on the way in instead of on the way out, because you'll be a little sad. You'll be heading home, and that'll be your last, unless maybe you want to do it both. But so the Blue Lagoon is pretty great, and
it is a splurge. We should explain that. So entry per person is last I read was $90 per person, and I think that includes one drink, which is not nothing, because drinking in Iceland is super expensive. A mixed drink will cost you $22 to $25, and a tap beer will cost you $12 to $15 each.
Yeah.
So that adds up really fast. So when you do that math and you think, oh, I paid $90 or whatever to get into this spa and you get a free drink, you can knock off $20 and kind of justify the expense. Plus they outfit you with a really nice bathrobe and a towel, and you get showers to use and a changing room. So that's kind of nice when you're just getting off the plane as well.
I think there's a cafe and bar inside of it. Maybe not a bar, but a cafe for sure. And probably we should note that this isn't just like a big, rectangular Olympic pool that's warm. It's kind of built into the natural environment. And one of my favorites was there was like a water drop of maybe about 10 or 15 feet where there's a cascade of water coming down, and you kind of sit under it and get your shoulders under this warm water after a long flight. And I remember telling Cherish that I didn't ever want to leave. But so
it's so lovely.
It's built into the natural environment. So there's little foot bridges, and it's kind of in a rock formation. So it's not just like a big people soup. It kind of is, but it doesn't. It's big enough where people can spread out and you can just kind of lay there in the warm water. And if you like a little hot tub, you'll love this. And worth it as probably, like I said, if you want to do it on your way out and on your way in. But worth it as a first thing to do before you even get to Reykjavik.
It also has. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
And so there's also this beautiful mud, like light colored mud, and it's recommended that you smear it all over your faces. So often when you see pictures of the Blue Lagoon, you see people and their faces are covered in this mud. It's amazing. But girls, I got to tell you, guys too, if you color your hair, the water will strip your color out, because it immediately did that to me. And of course I had just colored my hair so that I would be prepared for my trip. Yeah. And it dries it out like crazy. So be aware of that. Worth it.
Scott asks if you can you buy alcohol to consume at home?
Oh,
I don't know if you mean to bring back with you, or just to like your Airbnb, but yeah, you sure can.
And actually, Scott, I'm so glad you asked that question, because the cheapest liquor that you can get, the cheapest alcohol, is at the airport because you can buy it duty free.
Mhm.
So, disembark from your flight, go straight to the duty free gift shop, buy your allotment of liquor. And if you take that with you, then you can have drinks in your room instead of paying $22 or $25 a drink.
Yeah. So it's not an alcohol prohibitive country or society. It's not like they frown on it or anything like that. It's just expensive.
It's controlled by the government, like most Nordic countries. And so the price is higher. It's harder to find it. I think we only saw 1 or 2 liquor stores in all of Reykjavik.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah. So, and they have limited hours. So that is a really good tip. And I'm glad you asked that question, Scott. So what we did after the Blue Lagoon, we went to Reykjavik. And we had a little time to burn before we could get into our Airbnb. And we went out for coffee and we got that bill and started doing the math and realized we had already spent from the airport to town over $300. And so we sat down and started to hatch a plan. You just realize, we can't spend at this rate.
Right.
We can't spend $300 every 4 hours that we're in a country. So that's why I have this mug, which we purchased with the intention of making our own coffee in the mornings and at least saving on that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to, to go to supermarkets in foreign countries.
Right. And in Reykjavik, the best bargain, we're already getting into cost saving tips, but I think it's really necessary for a place like Iceland. If you want to shop for your own groceries, there's a grocery store called Bonus, and its logo has a pink pig, so you'll know that that's the grocery store with the best prices. They do have several locations, but there's one right in downtown Reykjavik that we would go to and stock up on things like coffee and breakfast items, and so that we wouldn't have to just blow our whole budget.
So the recommendation would be to maybe decide, do you want to, if you're a breakfast person and I love going out for breakfast, do that. And then maybe buy supplies for lunch. If you're like, I like to sleep in and, maybe just have some bagel or whatever it is that you like to have for breakfast, do that in your Airbnb or your hotel, or switch it up. But probably don't plan on going out for 3 meals a day every day, unless this is like your really big splurge and you feel like you can afford that. But it's going to run up really fast, even if you're there for a long weekend or something. But we were there for a good healthy week, probably like 10 days. And so just, maybe plan on a meal or 2 each day. And we did we'll get into this later, but we did some car camping, some van camping. And so we had all 3 meals there for about 3 or 4 days. But if you're just in Reykjavik and you have, it's probably good to look for an Airbnb or a little inn or hotel where even if you just have a microwave or a fridge or something, to save you some money for sure.
So we arrived into Reykjavik at the end of May, and I wanted to show you this. This is what the weather was like at the end of May in Reykjavik. It was so cold. The first day we arrived, it was like in the 70s for a brief period. And after that, it was cold the rest of the time. And we wore our jackets and our stocking caps for most of the trip.
I would say brisk.
He's much hardier than I am. I was cold the whole time.
We don't want it was so cold. It wasn't like -40.
Right.
That's
true.
It was jacket and cap weather. And I loved it. If that's not your thing, then go in midsummer. And this is a whole nother sidebar that we may not want to get into, but the tourist season is probably in the months where it's warmer, and the more you get toward shoulder, and especially winter when it's dark and cold all the time, if you're the hardy type who wants that. But we were there in May, and it was brisk. It was nice jacket weather, but it did not prohibit us from doing anything.
That's true.
Really. So yeah,
there were a couple of times where the wind felt really cold to me, especially. So they do have a number of shops, of course, downtown in Reykjavik, where you can, if you find that you have underpacked and don't have the appropriate outdoor wear, it might be fun to go out and get some souvenirs in the form of winter clothing or colder season clothing. And they, of course, have some fun stuff, including wool sweaters, if that's your thing. They make me itch, so it's not my thing. But yeah, so you could buy those things and then you bring them home and you have a souvenir, right? So cold, that's important to know. Even in the middle of summer, you're going to want to bring layers for your trip. And we also had sleet while we were there. So cold enough to get that mixed precip, which became an issue when we were driving.
It's a country near the Arctic Circle. So
so you know what you're in for, right? So what did we do after that? We explored Reykjavik.
And as we touched on before, we found a local. I forget if it was even a company, but it's just a person who you meet at X location, and they gather up. I'm sure those of you who've traveled in cities have done this before. You meet your guide, and they take you on maybe I think it was like an hour and a half tour. Downtown Reykjavik is not very big. It's, if you've ever been to like St. Paul, Minnesota, it's maybe that size. It's very walkable and small, but she was a really fun, awesome tour guide, as we mentioned before. Really proud of her country. And at the end of it, you give a tip. So it's no reservations required. No, maybe this has changed. Maybe it's app based now or something. But when we went, it was just we found it online and it said, meet here at this time every single day, or on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, whatever it was. Did the tour, and it was worth it. That was a good budget option, because I think we probably gave her maybe $20.
I can't remember. We're pretty good tippers, especially for a free tour like that. Where people are working based on tips, so you want to thank them appropriately.
That was fun.
It was actually a really great option. That was called City Walk Reykjavik.
Oh, okay.
So we do have some other thoughts in here. Let's see. Linda from Olympia, Washington. Hi, Linda. Down the hall from Scott currently. I hope you two get a chance to meet each other. That would be so nice. They're married, by the way. Have to head out for an appointment, but wanted to pop in. I love this idea. See you guys for the full hour in the next one. Thank you, Linda. And Linda loves jacket weather. She's Team Joel on that. I like sundress weather. That's my personal preference. Nicole is tuning in, also from Idaho. Hi, Nicole.
Hello, thank you.
Love your rating, cherish. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me.
We also, I think that walking tour was pretty early on, and then we kind of took what we saw and we just did. We didn't really book a lot or reserve a lot. We just kind of spent our days, a couple afternoons and evenings walking around. We found some bars, and we went out to dinner and trying to be real. If you like to sit and relax and watch the world go by and have a drink, it's a cool place to do it. But we probably had like one or two drinks and had to call it, just because it is so expensive. So that's one of the themes that we want to make sure that you're aware of is, and like Scott asked before, you can buy your own and bring it back to your room. But sometimes it's fun to go out. But
Definitely.
This isn't a place where you are going to be, like I said, unless that's all you really want to do. This isn't a place where you're going to be wanting to spend a lot of time in bars. It's just so expensive. But it's a fun place to people watch, and we had some really good food.
Yes.
And I believe we probably spent about 3 or 4 days in Reykjavik before our next adventure, getting out in the country, which you absolutely need to do there. But
of course, we ate a couple of meals out in Reykjavik, and we did go out for drinks a few times. And what we found is many places have a happy hour and a 2-for-1, which is a really good way to do it. So then you're paying $6 a beer instead of $12 or $15 a beer. So that was a good option for us. And we got to meet some locals. We did go out when it wasn't happy hour, and we met some locals, and they were so friendly. I cannot stress this enough. Iceland is super safe. People are really nice. And we just found it to be a very approachable country. Even if you're not a frequent traveler, even if you're a solo female traveler, I would feel safe walking the streets at night there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's
super
really,
safe.
yeah, it's really clean and safe. Sometimes it felt to me like if you've ever been up to Duluth, Minnesota, where you're on a big body of water and it's kind of it's got that feel to it, but very, very safe. And really walkable. Very not tiny, but not huge either. It's definitely not like a Manhattan or a Chicago, anything like that. It's pretty small and easy to navigate. And yeah, again, just to reiterate, the only thing is it's a bit expensive, but it is really fun to walk around. We one day went to, I don't want to say it was a suburb, but it was kind of an outer part of Reykjavik, and we went to a kind of it's a spa where they have the hot. This wasn't a hot springs, but it was where they have it's a municipal facility for the locals where they have like the hot thermal water that comes up in some pools, and then they have the cold pools where, if you've ever seen, like, people do that now, like what do you call it? The Nordic plunge.
Yeah, we call it the Nordic plunge.
So that's a part of their life is the spas. And this was not a tourist one at all. I'm not sure how we found it.
It's more like a public pool type situation.
Sure. Just a municipal pool, except they have sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except they have
the hot, and they have gradients. They have like the really hot ones where you sit around and relax, and they have a regular pool, and then they have like the cold plunge. And but this was a municipal one. I think we paid
like $4 US or something. Really, and you can stay all day.
Yeah, really different from a tourist trap one. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I would recommend that. And it's not hard to find. You just do a little research and,
They have these geothermal pools in every municipality. So just ask if you don't know where it is. Look it up online. You can get in there for cheap. You can spend the day there, soak in these beautiful geothermal pools. And Joel and I even had a contest where we went into the cool pool, the very cold pool, and timed each other to see how long we could stay in there. So that was good fun.
If you've ever done one of those Nordic plunges or the cold water plunge, you know what that's like. And so I'm not sure, maybe like 30 seconds, 20 seconds.
There was one guy who sat in there for so long. Do you remember? And we were like, oh my gosh.
It was almost like he was in some sort of a meditative trance or something. He got into the cold thing and just his head was out, and he was clearly a local, and he was in there for probably 10, 15 minutes. So more power to him, I guess. But,
Joel, my puffins got soggy.
Oh, nothing like sadder than a soggy puffin.
What's sadder than a soggy puffin? Nothing. So the geothermal pools are super cool no matter where you go. We rented a camper van because we determined, first of all, Reykjavik's great. If you're just doing a day or two, you can stay in the city or book a guided tour. But we wanted to drive around, and we kind of wanted to get away from tourists. In retrospect, we have additional thoughts about that. But what we had determined is I sort of suggested this because I really wanted to see the puffins, you guys. I love the puffins. They're so cute. And so we rented a camper van and talked with locals about where we should go to see the puffins, where we would be most likely to see them because they're only there for a short season. But we were there during that time period. So we rented this camper van and we headed out of Reykjavik bravely into the great beyond. And driving was a bit of a challenge. We chose to go north and stay on the west side of Iceland.
Right. So we'll talk about the Golden Circle, but that is more kind of southeast of Reykjavik, and we decided to go the other direction.
Yes.
And we'll talk about some.
Well, let's talk about it now. Why not?
Right. So our trip, we for some reason decided we weren't going to do the Golden Circle, which is what everyone does there.
Everyone
probably should do. It's where there's the famous geyser and there's the famous Gullfoss waterfalls. Full disclosure, we didn't go. We didn't see that. We were kind of feeling contrarian and
which we do.
Getting off the tourist track. So we went the other direction, and there's a peninsula there where we were going to go out to the tip of the peninsula and see the puffins where they kind of nest in these cliffs. And along the way, we were going to camp in the camper van. And there's a lot of free to very cheap public campsites in Iceland, and we mapped that out so we knew where we were going to go. And so that's what we did.
We knew it was many hours to drive there to see the puffins. And we actually had like a little skit that we did in the car where we had funny voices. And I would be like, but I want to see the puffins.
So yeah, our whole thing was I guess we didn't see.
We did not see. This is the closest I've gotten to a puffin.
And real quick, Mary asks a question about what do we eat. We ate for our special Iceland meal. We're eating, well.
These are kleinur. These are Icelandic donuts, and I'll post the recipe both on Facebook and on YouTube so that you can find it.
And our big joke was that we ate puffin. So yeah.
Yep, puffin cereal, puffin safe cereal. So
our adventure to see the puffins was one of the highlights, but in a way, I wouldn't even say a low light. But so we went the opposite way of the Golden Circle. We went to get away from the tourists, and boy, did we ever.
Yeah.
We drove probably 2 or 3 hours out. We're going to drive out to the end of this one peninsula. Well, we had this Volkswagen camper van. It's a European model camper van. And everything was fine until we started going up this mountain that you had to get out to the end of the peninsula. And what we found out was that it was kind of a dirt and very loose, gravelly road. So I'm driving this VW camper van with, to me, the tires are like about this wide. It's a European model. So at some point we're going up and up and up, and it starts to sleet.
It's sleeting.
And then we're on this mountain, the edge of a mountain.
No guardrails.
No guardrails. The guardrails suddenly slip away, and we're on this loose gravel, and we start to slough, and it's sleeting, and we stop and we make a calculation that we still got about 3 hours of that to go. It
was maybe 4 or 5 hours at that point.
Yeah, we decided
more that we had to drive. And lots of switchbacks and stuff on the fjords. Yeah. And I got out of the van because we had to turn around on this narrow dirt road, and I was already super anxious.
With no guardrails.
And lots of sleet. I snapped a photo of myself, and if I can find that photo, I will share it. It is not my finest moment. I'm crying and terrified. Anyway, we decided we would see puffins another year or decade.
Spoiler alert: we did survive.
We did,
but we got this little European van turned around and headed back down the mountain, and eventually started to feel a little bit better. But going down wasn't much better because again we were doing some sliding and slewing, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
But we did make it, and a couple hours down the road, we found all of a sudden we turned this corner, and there's this sort of like beautiful little quaint Nordic Icelandic inn where we stopped and
it was so cozy,
soup and coffee, and probably $100 for a bowl of soup and a couple of coffees. But
it was over $20 for a bowl of soup. But that was my lunch that day, and we were the only customers in the restaurant. Like that's how remote we were at this point. How far off the tourist track. So and then from there, so we stopped. We had lunch. We had some coffee. And then we
camped one more night,
found a little campsite. We stayed at a couple of campgrounds and they were really nice. And apparently pretty much anywhere you can also, in addition to finding those municipal geothermal baths, you can also find some that are in nature. It's important to know what you're doing because some of them are too hot to safely bathe in. And so you want to make sure it's good for that. This is a good time to talk about a movie that brings us back to Iceland in a heartbeat, and that is
Land Ho. So you can I guess you can kind of tell that it's about Iceland. You can see the geyser in the background, but this is one of our favorite comfort viewing movies. It's just about two old friends who go on a trip to Iceland, and it's probably not spoiler alert to say anything that nothing bad happens. It's just a really pleasant, funny, poignant movie, and it's set all in Iceland. They go there to kind of rekindle their friendship, and we won't give away too much. But Land Ho has got, if you want to get excited about Iceland. It's got some beautiful scenery, and they go to the Blue Lagoon and they go out into the Golden Circle, which again we did not, and maybe that circles back to golden circles back to we kind of wish we would have.
But I will say the route that we took, we didn't miss out on the natural wonders. It was so beautiful. And so I always think of their topography, their landscape as almost lunar. It almost feels like you're on the moon because it's so different from anything we have in the continental US that I can think of.
Yeah, there were some times when I thought I'd never been to New Zealand, but I thought it looked like that Lord of the Rings kind of that vast, almost awe-inspiring, vast landscapes with huge waterfalls, and it's so that for sure we were able to. It's not like our trip was anything. I mean, it wasn't unenjoyable except for the part about the mountainside road, but we saw some really awesome natural beauty, the kind of which you can probably see all over that country. But I think our point was that we maybe wish we would have done the Golden Circle, because that every time you watch a travel show about Iceland or you see pictures, people are going to I think there's 4 main stops, and it's all doable in one long day outside of Reykjavik. We just kind of felt like, no, we're going to go the other direction.
We felt like we were intrepid travelers.
Yeah.
And then travel, as travel always does, it taught us that may or may not be true.
we got a story out of it, for sure.
So we did stop along the way at some lava flows, and we hiked around. We saw so many waterfalls, and Joel was driving, and I would point them out as we were driving. But it got to be so many. Eventually we stopped, like bringing up the fact that there was another amazing waterfall, and they were all super beautiful. So it was fun in that respect. There was no traffic on the road. We pretty much had anything and everything to ourselves. And so that was super interesting. And then we were still able to find campgrounds where we could stay and cook our own food. And that was great too.
Yeah. So if that's something, if you're thinking about going there, if that's something you're interested in, we can't tell you what not to do.
I would say it felt very safe driving overall. Most of the roads were good, and there wasn't like heavy traffic to contend with or anything along those lines. So it really felt like it would be okay for pretty much anyone to rent a car and go. One thing that's really important to know is that there are roads, I think they call them F4. Is that what they call them? So there are some roads, and you'll see this if you watch Land Ho, where you actually go through riverbeds. Make sure if you're planning to do that, if you're planning to take those really rustic roads, get a good car. Get a car that is cut out for that, because our car was not approved to drive on those rustic roads, so we couldn't have done it even if we had come across one.
Right, and the rental agency did note that with us, right off the bat. So this is not a 4x4 or anything like that. It was more of a little European touring VW van, and it was great until it wasn't. But it made it. We got back safe. So.
I have no regrets about the van. I thought it was awesome. In fact, we returned home and briefly considered buying something along those lines.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I would love that. Okay, let's look at the comments for a minute. Let's see. Tony says she would have gotten out of the van while Jason turned around on the mountain road. Yep, I can see that. Mary says she's not sure she would have gotten in. It's worth doing. Georgette says puffins are on her life list. Yes, there are other places to see puffins. I believe there are some on the east coast of the U.S. as well. Didn't we look that up when we
like
got
Nova
back?
Scotia or something,
or like Maine or something.
Yeah.
And she said it was rainy and foggy when they were in Ireland, so she couldn't see them from the shore. Yeah. Pacific Northwest, she lists as a place where she went also. 0 puffin count. Yeah, they're sort of hit or miss, aren't they? But here in the Badzinski household, 100%. Guaranteed sightings of puffin food.
No puffins were harmed in the making of that cereal.
Puffin puffs.
As far as we know.
Let's see. After hearing the description of the road, I don't think I could have done it, Mary said. Yeah. So I would say if you rent a car and you take the Golden Circle, it's going to be more developed than the direction that we went. And paved roads, they're wide, you get beautiful, beautiful landscapes to see and many places to stop along the way. So I think you'd be just fine there. But there will be more traffic on that road because that is the most popular tour from Reykjavik, arguably.
And I would say if you want to go to Iceland and you want to come back and then ever see a travel show or a movie or read about Iceland and you'll read about the Golden Circle and you don't want to have regret that you didn't see it, then you should do it. But if you're like, I don't care, I'm just in Iceland, I'm happy, what we saw was great again. So, but if you don't want to have that thing of like, oh, there's the Gullfoss is like this giant waterfall, which you do any research about Iceland, you'll see it. Yeah. We did not see it.
You'll see it in Landho.
Other things, and it was great. So that's just advice for you to keep in mind that if you say, if you're someone who wants to kind of, I don't want to say checklist, but if you're like, okay, I saw that, I want to see that, you got to do the Golden Circle. And it's ready-made. It's not right next to Reykjavik, but it's ready-made for a long day trip. You can do it all if you're going just kind of on a big loop. So
yep. It's about I think what I read is 180-mile loop, something like that. So it's doable in a day, but lots of tour options if you want someone else to take the wheel, which is kind of cool too. Then you can just sit back and relax and enjoy.
Yeah.
So very fun. Let's see. Scott points out you don't even have to go chasing waterfalls. Very true. They're everywhere. Yep. It's amazing. Let's see. Patty says getting back in the car would have been hard. Yeah, the sleet would be the only reason to seek shelter in the van. Yeah. It felt a little dicey to me. Tony says, I would argue Yellowstone National Park has many of the same features. Large waterfalls, geothermals, natural hot springs. And I would agree with you, Tony. I have been to Yellowstone National Park. We went with you, you and Jason. And I would say, it was really astounding. The geothermal pools that we saw in Iceland were very different from what we saw in Yellowstone, but there are aspects that are similar. And I would say, in Iceland, one of the things that kind of blew my mind is that when you're driving through the countryside, you'll see steam coming up from just the ditches because there's so much geothermal water there.
Yeah, it's what powers their homes, and it's free. I don't know how it works. We could have an engineer on some point, but I don't know how it works. But it's their power is free and kind of, I believe, eternal, really. Until
so here, this gets to a fact that I did not read at the beginning, which is Iceland has a 99.96% renewable energy supply, mainly geothermal energy, almost 100%. That's crazy, right? 100% renewable.
Teresa asks, mode of local transportation, trains, buses. So in Reykjavik, inside of Reykjavik, there were buses, and I believe it was more like a trolley. I wouldn't call it a train. I don't know.
No subway, no train to speak of.
No subway, and I don't know, unless you're going from one really far-flung end of it to the other, I don't even know if you'd need like a Uber or a Lyft. It's very walkable. But I did see there's like kind of an intercity trolley.
Yeah.
And probably a bus system. But once you get out, you gotta rent a vehicle.
But it is super walkable
or a tour van
as a city. So if you're just going to Reykjavik, you don't need to rent a car. You can arrange for transport from the airport. It's not cheap. Again, it's another thing. I think I looked at the pricing before we had our live, of course. So what I saw was you can take a shuttle or a bus or a taxi. Taxi's going to run you like $150 from the airport one way. The shuttle, $80, I think, was on the high end. There are some cheaper options. A really good way to research this, no matter where you're going in the world, is a site called Rome to Rio, and it's ROME Rio, RIO.com. And they will actually plot out all of your options for transport between two places, including walking, and price it out for you as well. I have found that site is super helpful no matter where you're going. So you can price out what your transport to and from the airport is, or if you wanted to get from Reykjavik to some little town, there might be some options available.
Right.
Of course, we don't know everything that there is to know, but that's a really good site. Rome to Rio.
Yeah. Local crops? No idea. We learned a little bit of the history, and at one point they were completely isolated. So again, that's where the eating of puffins and sharks comes in. I think they're known for, they also lamb, I think
Yes.
but as far as crops, don't know. I think that there was a start of kind of like a greenhouse or indoor agriculture when we were there. Don't know too much about that though.
Yep. I did come across that information, of course, when in my research. So they do try to grow as much as they can locally because it's so hard to import stuff to there. They are relatively isolated. The ground there is mostly lava rock, and so you won't see like the rolling fields that you would see in Iowa or Nebraska or Minnesota, for example.
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting is in the restaurants, they focus on local specialties and local foods. So you'll get like locally fished fish, locally fished fish, local vegetables. It comes at a price. So should we talk about what things cost?
Yeah, go ahead. In short, they're expensive.
Yeah.
That's the one thing to be aware of if you go to Iceland and as we talked about before, some good hacks are for food to shop at a grocery store. I think there's several just right downtown. I mean, it's hard to miss even if you're just about anywhere in Reykjavik. They have supermarkets like we do here, and get some breakfast, some lunch, some snacks. Is a good way, but things are expensive.
Yeah, they are. So a hotel room in the city of Reykjavik can run about $350 a night, which is a lot for us. There may be people in the chat for whom that's not outrageous. And those would be standard hotels, not necessarily, I mean, nice hotels, of course. We went the Airbnb route and camping, which were really good options for us. Our Airbnb, I can't even remember what it cost us, but it was far less than $350.
It was less than that. We stayed at two places, of course,
ones.
in Reykjavik because we had our first leg, and then we traveled, or we did our camping, and then we came back. So one was, I think it was like a room in an attic, and I think it was a shared bathroom. And there's another one that was kind of more of like almost like a little hostel, but it was an Airbnb, and it had like a shared kitchen. I think there were probably about maybe half a dozen to 10 people in that same one, and that was like right downtown. That was right near that famous church that you would see pictures of.
The one that is hard to pronounce.
Yeah,
like everything there.
Yeah.
I won't even try, but it's a beautiful church, so you'll know what it is when you see it.
Yeah. So the Airbnb was good for us.
And also in some Airbnbs, you'll have access to a kitchen.
That was what I was going to say. Oh. That's huge. Even if it's you have your own or a shared kitchen, it's a big deal as we've hammered home, so you can do a little bit of cooking on your own instead of going out. Even though the groceries are more expensive, it's still way cheaper than going out to eat for all three of your meals.
So if you were to go out for lunch, and I double checked these prices before we went live, expect a plate for lunch to cost between $30 and $50. And the best option is usually what they call catch of the day. And it's whatever is fresh and right off the boat. And we did do that. I had the catch of the day one day, and it was beautifully presented, delicious, super fresh. But I think back then it was $25 for that.
Yeah,
plate.
Yeah, that's about right. But
so
again, if it's going to be your vacation, so maybe you do a lot of research about what kind of restaurant you want to go to, and maybe pick one or two and make that your splurge. Again, if you have a lot of means to enjoy more meals out, go ahead and do it, because it's actually becoming more and more known as a restaurant town. And we
that's
didn't have a bad meal. Even the hot dogs, they're famous for these hot dogs. What are they called? Pilsers.
Pilser,
And they're just like an American
PYL.
hot dog, except I think they're lamb, right?
They are generally almost all lamb.
Yeah.
And then they fry some onions and put those on the bun first and put the hot dog on top. And I think it had mayo and a sauce on top of it as well.
And there's like a famous stand right downtown. There's a long line for it. I don't know why it's famous. It's maybe the first one, but good little snack.
Yeah, it's a
if
good
you
one.
Like hot dogs.
So when we went, they were about $5. What I've read recently is that they're more in the $8 range now. They may be as high as $8. So for a street hot dog, that's probably your cheapest option for a meal, if that would satisfy you at a meal level. And it's a good option. Of course, you have to stand in the cold to get it. But so in addition to that, in Reykjavik, there's also a famous restaurant called Dill. If you're a foodie, you've probably heard of it. Super amazing multi-course meals that were not in our budget for this particular trip. But once you start doing the math about how much things cost, maybe it's worthwhile to invest in a nice meal if that's your thing, because you're just paying a bit more, but having sort of an experience of a lifetime.
Yeah, if you're a foodie, you can't. That would be, you could do a lot worse than that, and that would be, if that's your thing, then it's Dill, right? And it's been pretty famous for a while. Yeah, if you're a foodie, absolutely go for that. If you're more of like, no, I just want to get out, and you can do the entire, I think it's called the ring road. You can do the entire, circumnavigate the entire island. Apparently it takes something like 30 hours of driving, and you'd probably want to take, I think someone told us, look to like 5, 6, maybe even 7 days to circumnavigate the entire island. And we won't.
So Rick Steve said you want at least 6 days to do the ring road. I would say take longer, because it felt like it took us a long time to get to places. Everything's so spread out, and you want to be able to stop and enjoy the sights along the way.
Yeah, and check the volcano activity before you go.
Oh, right. So there has been some.
There has been. What we looked up before we came here is they're back full on. They had one in April that lasted maybe about a day.
An eruption he's talking about.
Yeah, volcanic eruption. From what I read, they didn't even interrupt flights in and out of Reykjavik. But they do have it, and it will close some roads. There's a really big one, I think, in 2012, I believe. But as from everything we've read and looked at, they're back full up right now. But I know when they had the big one, it was in the middle of the country, and you would not have been able to do that ring road. But that's for the adventurers for sure.
The nearest city to that volcano you cannot access. You cannot hike near the volcano site. There are day trips that you can take to go and see it if you want to, but you can't hike, obviously, for safety reasons. But it's important to check and make sure that Iceland is still allowing tourists to those places, because that activity has actually impacted the Blue Lagoon. So if that's on your list, know that a few times over the past couple of years, they've had to actually close the Blue Lagoon because of that volcanic activity. So that would be a huge disappointment to me to miss that. So I would want to follow up on that and make sure that it's open. What else would we do differently? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Boy, no, I think I would do the Golden Circle, which we didn't do. But again, we saw some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I would really double down on the local municipal spas where they have the hot. I don't know what you call, like a hot pool or a hot tub that fill the natural hot springs that fill these pools, and it's really cheap, and it's just a lot of fun. It's really kind of a no frills, locals only experience. But if you enjoy a hot tub or a swim, and there's nothing quite like it. It's just really, really relaxing and cool, and one of the more inexpensive things and kind of bang for the buck things you can do. I probably would have done that every day.
I agree.
Yeah.
And also, it's important to know from a cost savings perspective, don't ever buy bottled water in Iceland. The water that you get from the tap is probably the cleanest stuff you'll find in the world. It's delicious. It smells a little eggy on the front end, but then that clears away. So super fresh, delicious, crystal clear water. I would say the Golden Circle, I would do that next time I went. I would look into a puffin tour, maybe one that's closer to Reykjavik, because I really do want to see the puffins at some point.
Yeah.
But I would not eat them. I don't regret not eating them. I don't regret not eating the shark. That just doesn't feel like it speaks to me at all. What would you do again? Is there anything that you would?
I liked renting the camper van and getting out and doing some camping.
I did too.
It was the campsites are all the ones we went to were super clean, super easy to use. We just parked the camper van. You have a little picnic table. It's a lot like some of your better campsites you'll find anywhere here in the U.S. And it was again, that was a relatively cheap thing to do. And it's just kind of no frills fun. And boy, you can't beat the scenery for sure when you do stuff like that in Iceland.
Our camper van came equipped with everything you could possibly need, except maybe a fan so that Joel could sleep over my snoring. That was probably our hardest barrier to get over. I would definitely do the Blue Lagoon again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Even though it's expensive, such a fun experience. And again, if you watch Land Ho, you will see a scene in the Blue Lagoon in that movie. We highly recommend it. It watches like an indie film. There's no like explosions or car chases, but it's fun, good fun watching. Let's see. And does anybody have any more questions about Iceland for us? Let's see.
Mary asked how much to rent the camper van.
That's a good. I remember it was expensive. I think it was like $400 or $500 for 4 days. It's probably more now
I want to say it was just under that, but probably now it's probably $100 plus per day.
We went there pre-pandemic, and so of course, like everywhere in the world, Iceland has faced some inflationary pressures, so that's why prices have gone up. And so you will expect that. And then again, you're almost paying $9 a gallon for gas. Yeah. So it is a significant investment. But to us, we did the math on how much it costs to go out to eat, how much it costs for a night's lodging. And it was easy to pencil out a camper van in that and get out of the city, which is really fun.
Yeah.
This is an awesome budget tip for you to remember. Iceland Air flies throughout Europe, but they offer a free stop off in Iceland for passengers who are heading to Europe. So if you book a flight, say, I looked this up today, if you book a flight at the end of this month, if you're super inspired and you're like, I'm flying out of Minneapolis July 31st and going to Copenhagen with a week or 4 days in Iceland, that came out to less than $800 round trip. So you get that stop off, no additional charge. I think that is a great way to do it because you can also do it in a small portion. You could do a 3-day trip, which is cheaper than taking 10 days like we did. So super fun. Let's see. Any other questions? Still better than a hotel. Yeah, I think it really was.
I mean, the scenery is priceless and worth it to get out there, like I said, and see this, vast Lord of the Rings type scene. Not quite as green as that, but just these giant waterfalls that don't even, they have a name, but it's not a tourist site, but you're just like, wow. And then you turn the corner and you're like, wow. And you're doing this. Look at that. So the van, I would build that into your budget to get out and do some driving around, whether it's the Golden Circle or not. So.
But you don't have to go the van route either. So in Land Ho, they rent a Hummer, so you can drive through those riverbeds and have the fun of that if that speaks to you as well.
Teresa asked if they have, do the dogs wear mucklucks like Brooklyn? Oh, the little foot protectors.
That's a good question.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember. There was dogs there, but I think maybe they go without. But we were there in May, so in the winter. might be a bit different.
So if your goal in going to Iceland is to see the northern lights, you wouldn't want to go during the summer because it really is land
True.
of the midnight sun.
True.
We went out for drinks one night. It was 10:30 at night and it looked like noon outside.
Yeah.
So that was in May. And then of course they go through a stretch where they have virtually 24/7 sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
In the winter, it's the opposite. Lots and lots of darkness. But also lots of cold and blizzardy conditions. So maybe the shoulder season is a good route to go if you want to see the northern lights. There's never a guarantee, but that is quite something as far as a draw to Iceland goes. Anything else that anyone has questions about? Let's see. It looks like we've answered them all. We've filled our hour for sure. Joel is heading out on a trip shortly.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
Brooklyn's behind us there.
Yeah, she's got to play with her puzzles.
Yeah. So this Saturday, the 19th, I'm leaving for Montreal. My first true solo trip in probably about 8 or 9 years. Cherish insisted that I do some travel, have some vacation time.
Get out!
I want to do escape to Arizona summer, and it's something I haven't done for long, probably since I went to Poland in 2017 by myself, although I met some family there. So I'm excited, and I will report back probably in 2 weeks on our usual Tuesday to give you a little bit of what I saw in Montreal, and then our other theme is probably to be determined. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. It's been so fun to talk with everybody and see all your names popping into the chat. Let us know in the comments or on Facebook where you would like us to talk about next. If there are any destinations that you're interested in, we're happy to bring whatever knowledge we have to the table and share it with people and help you on your travel journeys. And Mary says, safe travels.
Thanks everybody
Joel.
for joining us, for taking time out of your night. That's awesome.
Scott says, enjoy Montreal. And Teresa sends a kiss. And the other Scott says, thank you guys. Miss your face.
Brooklyn says goodbye. Thank you. Miss you guys all. Thank you so much.
And Heidi says, so fun to hang out and chat about your adventures. Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finger hearts. I'll let you know when we're having our next live stream.